folks. Happy Halloween. This is the Sportsline Podcast here on the CHCH multimedia platform. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Well, as many of you know, sports in Southern Ontario is our focus. And friends, it's hard to argue that this region has developed many outstanding athletes, teams, executives. And today we speak to a pair of media contributors to break down a variety of sports near and far. It's April of 2020, and with the coronavirus shutting down everything in the sports world, Hamilton Spectator columnist Scott Radley assembled veteran spec sports writer Steve Milton, CHML morning man Rick Zamperin, and yours truly from CHCH to band together and host an online sports program named Home Games Hamilton. In a situation where few of us could get together due to COVID regulations, the weekly show that actually gained its own cult following allowed us to voice our opinions and weigh in on a variety of topics. And I'll tell you, folks, we certainly did over that time have a whole lot of fun. So let's bring in the three fellas, or at least the two fellas, and we'd like to bring in Uncle Milty, but he's away in Ottawa on assignment, but he sends his best wishes. He's up in the nation's capital, as they're saying. Guys, it's great to see you. You guys have been individual guests on the Sportsline podcast, but I said, you know, there's, again, so much. We've had the sports equinox going on, lots of topics, and I love your opinions, so let's kind of chat about some things. How are you?
We are here on Halloween in costume as extinct 900 CHML radio hosts.
Yes.
That is our costume.
It's a trending costume this year.
Yes.
It's very popular in all the stores.
No.
Yeah.
And I think we should say, and I don't know if Rick will want to back me on this one, that if this is going to be a redo of Home Games Hamilton, I particularly love that Bubba is awake and not running to the camera going, oh man, I slept in.
Yes, absolutely.
I slept in. I'm here though. I'm good. I'm ready.
I will say too, we haven't changed much in 4 years looking at the vids.
No.
You know, we look exactly the same.
But I mean, you guys were always the morning guys. Like, I mean, you were up especially early. Me, I'm the late guy coming home at 1 o'clock and staying up till 3, 4. And then you guys would do this early morning call at what, like 10:30?
Before then, usually.
Yeah,
It
was
Sometimes before that.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah, the common text was, "Where's Bubba?"
Somebody call him. Somebody call him. Wake him up.
Good times, though. Good times, though. Hey, let's talk about a couple of things. Last night, in the most unbelievable fashion, the LA Dodgers, you know, they knock off the New York Yankees in 5 games. I mean, Game 5 we'll always talk about. And they win the World Series. Cost them a lot of money, but are they deserved winners, Rick? I
would say so, yeah. I mean, they weren't in the number 1 payroll in Major League Baseball. That belonged to the Mets. But you look at the top 6, and I was actually studying this the other day. The top 6 payrolls in Major League Baseball, they all made the playoffs. The Dodgers being the second most. Listen, they had the best player. They bought the best player in Shohei Ohtani, the $700 million man. Major League Baseball's first ever 50-50 guy. You know, pitching-wise, they had some problems in the playoffs because of injury, but as a whole, this team was stacked. They had the most wins in the regular season. They, you know, overcame some adversity against the Padres and a little bit against the Mets. I think clearly, top to bottom, beginning to end, they were the best team.
Your thoughts, and I know what it's going to burn you is that there are 4 Blue Jays that are World Series champions.
Yeah, because that Teoscar Hernandez was just not a guy you want on your team.
No.
Yeah.
And, you know, as Ross Atkins says, power is so overrated.
How many home runs were there?
Yeah, I know. And think about next year. You mentioned about Shohei. Imagine next year when he's actually pitching as well when he gets back. They potentially could be better. Look, they had the best regular season record in baseball. They ran over everybody in the playoffs. They clobbered the Yankees. You can't argue it wasn't deserved. I do hate one thing about Major League Baseball, and that is the vast disparity in salaries. And, you know, I think there are some teams that could and should spend more that are just being really cheap. But I think also there are other teams that, you know, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, they'll never be able to compete money-wise with the Dodgers. And so when you spend a lot of money, and then when the players that you spend it on actually come through, nobody else has a chance.
Mm-hmm. But I would look back, and I feel like in time, or overtime at least, that we have seen teams like Arizona. There are teams like Kansas City, you did bring them up, that every once in a while, the Brewers make the playoffs, it seems like, closely almost every single year. And I don't think they're close to the payroll, but they kind of get in too.
Tampa Bay was a great example of that. For years, they would challenge for division titles or win a division title, and their payroll would be, minuscule in comparison to the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets. They would develop some great players. As a whole, their team would be really good, but at the end of the day, they wouldn't be consistent enough. They might be an anomaly because they would have to sell off their players or they couldn't re-sign. The Oakland A's are probably the perfect example of that, where they would develop really good players through the draft, through some free agent, acquisitions, and those players would just come through, but then ultimately they'd have to either not re-sign them or trade them away.
Montreal doesn't have a team today because that's what they had to do. They developed all these great players and then move them on. The point is, you're absolutely right that these teams, smaller market teams, have made it at times. The difference is a team like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, there is so much of greater margin for error that if a player doesn't work out, if you're the Tampa Bay Rays and you pay a guy $20 million, he has to work out.
Yeah.
He has to work out or it's catastrophic. Whereas the Dodgers, $20 million, guy doesn't work out, oh, well, we got 5 more of those guys waiting to come in. So you just have a greater margin for error. You can take chances and hope that a guy does what you expect that he's going to do.
All right, well, then I have to go with here then. Would you prefer, this is sort of baseball is sort of representing a free North American enterprise that, you can spend what you want to spend. Because sometimes it doesn't work. And we've seen over, I think, going back maybe 2 decades ago in the National Hockey League, remember how the New York Rangers used to spend, but they would never get in, even with Sather behind the bench in those clubs, and now they too, like many other sports, have adopted a salary cap. And I know it's not really a salary cap and there's a penalty and a price to pay for spending over in baseball, but would you like to see a hard cap?
I'd love to see a hard cap. For the pure enjoyment of those fans in places like Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and Kansas City, who, I know Kansas City won the World Series a few years ago, but those are few and far between. If you have a hard cap in there, everyone's on the same playing field. You're not going to get a big money owner in LA or New York or Chicago, whatever the case is, that can buy their way into the playoffs or, at least try to do so. I think it levels the playing field. I think there's the same amount of money in the pool for all the players, so it's a win-win situation. I'd love to see a hard cap. I think it's worked in the National Hockey League. You can't buy your way to a Stanley Cup final.
I don't love salary caps, but I would like to see the existing situation in MLB be a little more punitive, because clearly the payroll tax isn't dissuading the biggest of the teams.
Not at all.
So triple what you're charging right now and say all that money is going to help the teams if you can show that you are one of the lowest teams, not just you're being cheap. If you can show that, due to our stadium or whatever, or I don't even know where else it would go, but the idea of a salary cap, to me, like, go to the NHL for a second. Why is it that Maple Leaf fans, we're in Maple Leaf area here, why are Maple Leaf fans penalized essentially because they support the team, they buy the merchandise, they pay the exorbitant ticket prices and $28 for a beer or whatever the heck it is now, and they can't spend more than Utah? Why? That to me doesn't make sense. So to me, you should have some flexibility that if you want to spend more, great. It's going to cost you, but you have the possibility to do that if you're in a great market. And New York and LA may have spent the exact same amount and said, if we get to the World Series, it's worth it to us. They may have, but who knows?
I wonder if baseball benefits, though, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, if Cincinnati, if Tampa, if Arizona, Colorado make the World Series, is that good for baseball? Is that good for the television people who are paying tons of money to cover these series? Because I thought, first of all, this year is a perfect example because I thought, I don't know if you guys watched them all. Baseball is like low on my charts in terms of priority. I thought the baseball playoffs were outstanding this year. Like, there were just so many storylines, the games, comebacks, crowds going crazy. I've said it before, there's something about playoff baseball. You're hanging on every single pitch. There's so much emotion.
Unless you're Aaron Judge. Then you're missing on every pitch. But that's a whole different story.
Come on. The guy, he wouldn't be there if it was for him, right? He had his moments, and he tried last night, right? He tried, right? Like, oops. But I think that at the end of the day, if you don't have these big teams in there, that's how you sell baseball. Because I don't know if you can sell guys that are, I'm sure there's some great stories in Cincinnati,
The offshoot of that, though, Stanley Cup final. Edmonton, Florida. If you're the National Hockey League, would you not want, the Rangers and the Kings or whatever?
Yeah, of course.
And that was an epic final, right? Florida takes a 3-0 lead. This series is over. Edmonton battles back, and it's an amazing Game 7. So, you can have it both ways, I think. Not every year has to be Yankees-Dodgers. Why not have, Blue Jays and...
Stop it.
San Diego. Pipe dream.
Pipe dream is right. Canadian Football League and Commissioner Randy Ambrosie has announced that he will be retiring from his post sometime in 2025. Is this a surprise to you, Rick Zamperin?
There wasn't really any indication publicly that the Board of Governors were entirely upset with the direction that the league was going in. There were some grumblings, as there usually is during a season of, was that the right decision? Are we going the right way? Little kind of death by 1,000 cuts issues like Genius Sports and how their statistics are still not up to par. Those things you kind of hear about, but for the board to basically say we don't support you 100% was a little surprising. As a whole, has Randy Ambrosie done a good job? I think, during the pandemic, that was certainly challenging. There were some mistakes made. There were some, big gaffes in terms of requesting money from the federal government.
Oh, that was awful.
It was a bad look. The whole global CFL thing was really not what fans wanted or anticipated or even see the benefit of. I think the next guy really has to be a guy that pushes this league forward.
Look, there are some things that you can point to and say they are victories. I was looking it up before we came here today. TV is up a little bit this year. Attendance was up a little bit this year. There's two areas that I would say that are if you want to say, so we'll give him the credit for those things, because if you're going to criticize, you also have to give him the credit. So he gets the two areas that I would say that the new person has to do better. And I'm not even going to talk about the global thing, because that was just would the league be any different if we didn't have an Australian punter but had a Canadian university punter? I don't think so.
He kind of benefited here in Hamilton. He was pretty good.
Well, he was good. Yeah.
It was fun, but is that worth the whole?
No, you're not.
You're not selling tickets to go see global player X.
Yeah, I'm not buying. As much as Ticat's punter was, good and a nice guy and all the rest, I don't think a single person bought a ticket to go watch him punt.
No.
The two areas are, we sit up in the press box for every game looking down, and you can see the back of people who are in the stands. The one thing, and I think we've talked about this in the press box, the one thing that always strikes me is when you look at those Ticat jerseys, and there's a lot of them that are in the stands, almost none of them are current players. They are Zambiazzi, and they are McManus, and they are Hitchcock and Moriali, and go down the list of all these guys, and they're being worn by middle-aged people who were fans then. I think somehow getting a younger crowd is a huge thing they have to do. That's the first one. And the second, and you touched on it with the technology, it is an embarrassment in 2024 that your league does not have a working iPhone or phone app that people can follow along with. That should, to me, they tie in together. Younger audience, technology, you can't be claiming that you are a credible league, and there are leagues that are hardly anything that have a working app. How does the CFL, it just, that to me is, when that thing went down a few years ago, it was like, phew, all right.
Well, right down to right now, if you go out on CFL.ca, right, first of all, why are the stats in PDF form? Right? Like, what are we thinking here?
It's 2024.
Exactly, right? And all of us here have covered local sports. You can go on the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League website and find out goals, leaders, everything more efficiently and quickly than the CFL one. And at times we have seen during games, because you guys have covered in game and you're writing for deadline sometimes, where it's not available.
Let me tell you what happened on the last home game, where Bo was going to go over 5,000 yards. And in the game, we're watching, we're counting it down to see when he's going to get there, and he's at 49.78 or something, and then all of a sudden he's at 49.27. It's like, wait a second. Well, I don't know what those are the exact numbers, but suddenly 48 yards went away, and then it went up a little bit, and we're like, okay, we can't possibly have a guy go over a 5,000 yard mark and not know if and when he did. Why did the points go? Why did those yards go away? What are the real? It was. I know it's human, and I don't want to be overly judgmental and overly harsh. But you got to be able to rely on.
You can't give us a system that's not ready. Right? You had an old system, run the old system until the new one is ready, and then launch.
Let's not forget, this is 2 years in the making. Two years to get online stats or some kind of app with stats. And let's not forget.
For 9 teams.
Yeah. Fantasy football is gargantuan.
Yes.
In the NFL. In the CFL, it's non-existent. For the most part, because that element is missing, and it's a key part of moving this league forward. Another one too, and you kind of mentioned it, the jerseys that we see in the stadiums, and Hamilton's not alone in this. This is in Saskatchewan, it's in BC, it's in Toronto, whatever the case is. The CFL has to figure out a formula for when a team stockpiles its roster with players, that those players are A, good enough, and B, paid well enough to stay with that team for an extended period of time. When is the last time a player played for 10 plus seasons in the same city? Simone Lawrence comes to mind. After that,
there's not a ton.
Yeah. They got to figure that out.
Well, I mean,
you cannot sell a jersey of any guy who does not have a 3-year minimum contract.
There you go.
Well, I mean, maybe the PA's got to get into that as well too, because they're. I mean, this goes to the bigger picture here. I've always gotten the feeling over Randy Ambrosie's tenure, which will be 7 years, I believe, second longest of all time, and that is concerning to me, that there's always been a schism between the two, the Players Association and the commissioner. And I know that exists in a lot of leagues, but a lot of times there seems to be a lack of trust on either side. It has been really difficult to put together CBAs. It's been difficult to put together television contracts over the years, and this is all during Randy's reign. So boy, it's so tough to, because it's hard to be critical. It's easy to be critical, actually, on a job like that, because I don't know anyone that's taken the CFL Commissioner's job and said, what a great job this is. Yeah. Right? He's been a great cheerleader for the league. I give him all kinds of credit for that. But I'll tell you, there has been some issues with this league.
So who's next? Who's next who could solve that problem?
Who wants this job?
I don't know if he wants the job, but I'll tell you one person I would hope they would interview, Mike Morreale. He's been a commissioner of a league that's grown out of nothing. Yep. He's, by every account, done a great job. He is involved with the Ticats still, but he's a huge fan of the league. He's been part. I don't know if he's the guy who should get the job.
He's worked for the PA too.
Yeah. He absolutely should be interviewed. There's 2 people, actually, and they're both from around here. And again, I'm not suggesting, I'm not being their agent, but they should be interviewed. Him and Pete Diakowski should both be interviewed
also
for that job.
For the PA.
Great people, like going around and glad handing. They're great at that stuff. Worked in the business, also worked for the PA. Pete did. I'm not in the hiring business. I just hope they don't have blinders with one particular person, and they open it up to some new young guys with some ideas, and you say, all right, let's hear what they might pitch if we have a meeting. That's all, and let's see where it goes from there.
I can't speak for Mike, but I think his gig is too good right now.
I didn't say he would take it.
No, I'm just saying,
but I think they should ask.
To find out an approach, and I don't know what this job pays, and I don't know if that's a silent thing or whatever, but yeah, I think that job, from what it reads to me, is that you have to, you're a commissioner, but you're there to serve the board of governors. And that's tough. Yeah. Because that's tough to make decisions, Rick.
Well, absolutely. You got 9 people around the table. Some are from the old guard, if you will, because there's a lot of new owners, and we'll call them the new guard. And are they on the same page? Do they want to move the league in the same direction? I think at the end of the day, they all want to sell more tickets. They all want to sell more merchandise. They all want to make a lot of money, and if the next commissioner can tick off all those boxes, then congratulations, you're doing a great job. But easier said than done with the mathematics that the CFL has in place. And so if they can get a former player who understands the game but also understands the business part of it and can generate more revenue, think outside the box in terms of attracting more fans, more viewers from a multimedia stand, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the person that they need.
it's a gate-driven league. If we can put up the attendance figures here, I don't know what you think about these guys compared to last year. I mean, and I don't know if a lot of this has to do with wins and losses. Obviously, BC's up massive because I think they were off to a great start. Amar Doman has done a wonderful job as the new owner there, and has just sort of exposed that team to the community like we haven't seen in a very, very long time. Plus, they're hosting the Grey Cup.
Is Montreal, that number right? Minus 38,000
compared to last year,
compared to last year.
Yeah. I did not even know that one. That's
the one that surprises me the most, to be honest, is Ottawa. This is a team that had not made the playoffs since 2018, I think, 2019. They finally get in. Let's not forget, they were 8-3-1 at one point. I mean, they were steamrolling teams. New players have been added. Players have come back from injury like Jeremiah Masoli. It was a great story and a very successful run franchise. I'm really shocked that that's a minus.
Well, in talking to AJ Jakubek, who's the play-by-play guy there, who's going to be a future host, future guest here on Sportsline as well, too, is that he talked about the fact that the fans are still in this wait and see. They've been duped for so long. They went, almost 4 years without a home victory?
Yeah.
Kind of like Edmonton as well, too. And Edmonton's got other issues, and they finally have come together. They have a president, and the president got announced recently. That Ottawa, even in their final game of the regular season against the Tiger Cats, if you look, the building was half filled.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just so stunned. I should have looked at this, but I never saw that Edmonton number before. That means that essentially all of Ancaster stopped going to games this year. I can't imagine that they had more than 38,000 a game going last year. Like, that means they must have had 45 or, well, more than that, 50,000.
Probably a good pre-sale for the 2023 season.
No, this is total attendance.
This is total attendance.
This is not average attendance, obviously.
Sorry, I was thinking average attendance.
But still, it's a big number.
It's a big drop.
It's still a big drop, right?
Okay,
but I think they pre-sold so well for 2023, and then they're like, you know what, this team's garbage, and you know what, when you guys figure it out, we'll buy a ticket.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's not forget, too, so Edmonton's going through an ownership change, right? This past season, they finally have, for the first time ever, an owner as opposed to being a community-owned franchise. As you mentioned, they have been tremendously terrible at home for many, many games, and not just losing, but losing bad. There's also the quarterback situation there too, and it was back and forth. And I think, as a fan, you get frustrated with all that kind of stuff. So I'm not terribly surprised that it's down. It is a large number, and they have a lot of work to do. They closed the Upper Bowl. That's no longer an option for fans. It's a huge stadium. They got some work to do in Edmonton.
Yeah, clearly I bumped my head coming in here thinking that was that's what I was so shocked at. It's like, wow. In the world. Anyway, okay.
One last thing on the Ambrosie reign, and it's funny because every time I look at we create boards like that for the Canadian Football League. It's crazy how one side is 4 teams, the other one is 5 teams, and of course you know where I'm going. Like, how much longer? Well, I mean, apparently we were really, really close before the COVID situation set in across the world. Is there going to be a team in the East? Is this finally going to happen? Because under Ambrosie, I thought he was going to make this happen.
Right.
And now I feel like we're farther away than ever.
I'll jump on this one first. I don't think there will ever be a team in our lifetime.
Wow.
And I'm saying that because how many times have we been close? Something's happening. There could be an owner there. There are stadium options. I just don't see it in terms of someone sticking their neck out from an ownership perspective to say, I'm going to do this. And I know I'm going to lose some money off the hop. And it might be a lot of money, but I'm willing to do that. I just don't see it happening.
I just think that they're aiming at the wrong target. I don't know why they keep looking at Halifax or Moncton or wherever else when you've got Quebec City, which has shown it will support Laval in enormous ways. And they've got a stadium that you could use. You'd have to add something to it, but you could get started there. I don't know why they keep saying we have to go as far out to the east as the Maritimes when you've got, if you want your 5th Eastern team, I think Quebec City would work better because there's clearly a football market built in there. There is clearly a football love in that area.
On a college level or a professional level, you think?
I think football, to some degree, I think football is football. And look, I think that we've seen with the Nordique, they left Quebec. The Nordique left Quebec not because people didn't like the Nordique anymore. It was a business situation. Right. I think people in Quebec City are exceedingly passionate about anything to do with Quebec City and Quebecois and all the rest. I think you could make that work. Probably better than that Maritime team.
Laval had a better average attendance than some CFL teams. I think they averaged 22 or 23,000, which is more than some CFL teams.
It's incredible.
And that's university football. So now let's bring the pros, which you would argue is a better brand of football, right? Lots more excitement, in some cases more points for both teams. Laval or Quebec City would be a tremendous asset.
And you don't think that there is a way that you could work that together, that you know, Laval ticket buyers, and you buy the two teams together, and you get a schedule. Here's another thing. Quebec City's, if you live there, it's easy to get to. It's not always the easiest to get to, but neither is the Atlantic. If you were to say, look, we want to have all of our CFL games the day after or the day before Laval. So you come to Quebec City, you can stay for a weekend and see 2 games. To me, it just makes sense, but they just keep overshooting Quebec City and saying we got to go to the Atlantic provinces, and nothing ever happens. And maybe there's a better option right there.
It would certainly be better for the league in terms of travel and that kind of thing, getting to Quebec City. I mean, and of course the natural rivalry between Montreal and Quebec City, and then you even kind of throw in Ottawa up too. That would be a lot of fun.
If you have 3 or 4 games a year between those two teams, they're guaranteed sellouts every time, and huge TV in Quebec.
It's a new addition to the Labor Day weekend. Let's do it.
Sold.
Let's play. You guys want to run for commissioner? You guys want to do this?
Sold CHCH. Buy the team.
7-11 record, no playoffs. The Tiger Cats season is over. Scott, where do we go from here?
2 things. You, first of all, do everything within your power to keep Chris Jones around, because that defense changed dramatically under Chris Jones. And quite honestly, I think if he'd been there since the start of the year, I would bet all kinds of money that they're in the playoffs. The second thing is a little more complicated, but this team, and I wrote about this week, this team for years now has stunk the joint out to start the season. I think they've won 3 of their last 21 opening games. And this year they were 0-5. Last year it was 0-3, I think. The year before, 0-2. The year before that, like 1-4. Anyway, I know that it would be flying against the grain. But, you know, CFL teams tend to build up in the preseason. You play some guys a little bit. You put in your starters for the. If I'm the Ticats, based on what I've seen for the past couple of years, I am telling the guys, when you show up at camp, be prepared that the starters are playing both preseason games, and we are playing it as if it counts from the beginning, because we have to hit the ground running. We can't take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 games to find ourselves. We are doing it different, and game 1 of the preseason, the other team may put a bunch of guys who are never going to make the team on the field. Doesn't matter. We'll then win 70-0. We are going to show up ready with our starters, so when the real games start, we're good to go.
Rick, is it all about the start?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you look at, and Scott had all the stats correct, this team has been behind the 8 ball every season at the start of the season and plays catch up. And while they've had some really good records in the second half of the season, and kudos to them, because it's tough to win in the Canadian Football League, but when you're starting 0-5 or 0-3, not only is that no points in the standings, but that's lost momentum. That's guys getting frustrated. Maybe in some cases, guys trying to do something extra to get their team into the win column, and that results in injuries or ineffectiveness. Having a great start, you look at the teams that are successful, they usually get off to really good starts. Ottawa's a great example this year. Got off to a roaring start. Not necessarily did they cruise into the playoffs, because they hit a bumpy road, which every team is, going to do. But they were much better positioned to, put the final screw into their, picture to say, all right, we're making the playoffs. I think, they got to fix the defense. There's no doubt about that. There are some good pieces there. Scott Milanovic mentioned that in the year-end, locker clean-out event, that there are some good pieces on defense we have to add to it. It's going to be very interesting to see how they go about doing that. Do they focus on a position group? I'm looking at linebacker. Secondary's got to improve. They got to rush the passer a lot better. There are some key identifiable pieces that need to be added to this team. And then there's special teams. I mean, for years, Hamilton had some amazing special teams return guys. Chris Williams, Marcus Thigpen, Speedy B. who's going to be the next guy? We've been searching for that guy for 3-4 seasons now. So
kind of thought Tyreek McAllister was going to be him.
Well, he was, and then said, "All right, I'm off to the NFL," and now he's applying his trade there. So there are some really good pieces to this puzzle. How they add to it in the offseason is going to be really interesting.
You just mentioned the year-end press conference. Let me just quote one guy from that I thought was the amen moment of the press conference. Casey Sales got up and he goes, that cliche that people always say the CFL season really begins at Labor Day? Clearly it doesn't. Yeah. And I am so thankful that somebody acknowledged that. Yeah. You can't say we're just going to take it easy for the summer and then crank it up when you get to. Sometimes that works. Because traditionally there's always one really poopy team in the East that you can always go, okay, we can just pass that. This year, for the first time in a while, all the East teams were pretty good, and you buried yourself.
And I don't see that changing either. I think the East is like this trend towards the East being a good franchises, unless they got another fifth team. I think it's going to be the same next year. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, and we talked about the commissioner. I think that should be a rule the commissioner puts in, by the way. First person that says the CFL season begins at Labor Day is banished from the league, because that is the worst ad campaign. It's the worst marketing campaign for anyone buying a ticket prior to Labor Day. Mm-hmm. Why am I going to the third game of the year if this is a glorified exhibition game and doesn't mean anything?
Good point.
It's a stupid cliche that has been proven this year not to be true. I hate it. I've always hated it, but it keeps, and they're trying to sell Labor Day, but it's stupid.
Well, I was
going to say, you can count the number of teams on one hand that started 0-5, 0-6, 1-8, who either made the playoffs or won the Grey Cup. The BC Lions in 2011 or whatever it was, 2010.
8-10.
Yeah, started 0-5, and they ended up catching fire in the second half of the season. How many other teams have done that?
No.
Zero. You have to hit the ground running, as Scott said, and pick up those wins and get those points early on in the season.
Yeah, what people forget is that the margins become so small down the stretch there. I mean, and look what happened. The Tiger Cats were under such intense pressure. Hard to believe that they ripped off 4 straight victories and made it real interesting. But to the point that when Winnipeg came here, they needed to win. It had to be a win. And then obviously to have the game against Ottawa really, really means something. But yeah, you cannot continue to go this way. Let me talk about the quarterback here. As we just find out on our day of taping, is that Bo Levi Mitchell will be the East representative as most outstanding player. And that's become a discussion nationwide as well, too, because he's a quarterback that's put out huge numbers, but on a team that won't even make the postseason. Scott, your thoughts on this?
I was a voter. Were you a voter? Mm-hmm. Rick was a voter. Were you a voter?
Yep.
Okay, I was a voter. We were all voters. And I really debated this one. And it took me a long while. And when I started, I was like, no, I cannot vote for a quarterback of a team that's not going to make the playoffs. And then I started looking back over the season they had, and 2 things stood out. One, how far ahead of his contemporaries Bo Levi Mitchell was. He was not a few yards ahead and therefore slightly the best quarterback. He blew the field away. So there's that. But then the knock against him was that they didn't make the playoffs. And that was the only thing seemingly that meant he wasn't going to get a nomination. They didn't make the playoffs. Had they finished third, nobody has a problem and it's a foregone conclusion. He threw a pass right into Tim White's hands in the first game of the year against Calgary that was dropped. That would have been a touchdown. They would have won that game. He threw a pass right into Tim White's hands in the end zone under the goalpost against Saskatchewan in the first home game. They would have won that game. He threw a pass that Tim White might have caught against Winnipeg. That I don't know if it changes it, but it might have. Any one of those happens, they probably make the playoffs. Those aren't on Bo. He did what he was supposed to do. Therefore, I was like, all right, if you count the numbers and you look and say he gave the team the chance to win and it was not on him that they lost, I decided, yeah, I'm going to vote for him.
Bo Levi Mitchell is a quarterback. Quarterback plays on offense. What did we just talk about? What's wrong with the Tiger Cats? Defense and special teams. Tiger Cats missed the playoffs because of defense and special teams, not because of offense, because they were one of the highest scoring teams. He was one of the most, in terms of statistics, the biggest performer in the Canadian Football League. When I'm going through the list of candidates, I'm thinking to myself, who's jumping off the page for me? Who was outstanding this season? Bo Levi was outstanding. And yeah, you can say he got benched. and then Taylor Powell gets in and gets hurt, and Bo Levi goes on, an epic run. But top to bottom, played all 18 games, hit all the big passes.
Yep.
Yeah, he struggled at times. Every player does so.
Over 18 games.
But then you compare him to the Cody Fajardos of the world, Chad Kelly, who played half a season, Drew Brown in and out of the lineup. There wasn't really a big-time running back in the East aside from Kadeem Carey, who you could say was outstanding. Yeah. Tyrese Beverett on defense, a defender. It's extremely hard to win that award.
And he didn't even have the most tackles on his team.
There you go. So, you go through all these kind of criteria and comparisons, and, I came to the conclusion, like Scott was, he is the most outstanding player in this division and maybe in the league. Brady Oliveira has a fantastic campaign. He didn't score a touchdown until, I think it was after Labor Day.
Well, after Strevler got hurt.
There you go.
Does it change the metrics for you or the decision? Because the CFL calls it most outstanding player also, which also to me changes. It's not most valuable, because that's valuable to your team, I think. And if that's the case, I think it may change a little bit about it, because, I don't know. But if it's just most outstanding player, I think that also allows more leeway for him whether you make the playoffs or not.
Absolutely it does. I think it completely changes it. MVP and MOP to me are two completely and I think the CFL does this on purpose, word it that way. Yeah. And I think it allows for Bo to maybe even win the MOP for the league.
One is most meaningful and one is best.
Yes. Right? Because look at Oliveira's numbers. Yeah. Oliveira had a year, not going back to 2023, which we hadn't seen in maybe 20 years in terms of production for a running back, and he didn't win. Yeah. So his numbers are below what they were in 23. And yet, it looks like it's going to be Bo versus Brady. It is.
Yeah,
okay, so
and now you're looking at the comparison. So you mentioned it too. Bo is so far ahead in terms of touchdowns, passing yards, completions than anyone else. Brady Oliveira is not that far ahead from William Stanback or Kadeem Carey. So for me, most valuable player is if you took that player out of the lineup. How many more wins or how many less wins is that team going to have? And in this case, too, if Bo Levi doesn't start a game this season, are they winning 7 games? I don't know. If you take Brady Oliveira out of Winnipeg's lineup, how much worse are they? Probably going to be, a couple of games here or there, but I don't think they're not making the playoffs.
No.
Well, you also can make an argument, and I'm not going to make it right now, but you can make an argument that was Oliveira's the nominee in the West. Could Milligan have been that guy from Saskatchewan who was the best defender by a fair margin this year?
They're probably going crazy in Regina right now. They're probably losing it, because I know there was a hard push from people out of Saskatchewan to say that Milligan was the guy. And you know what? When you take a look at what he did on special teams and defense, there is an argument to be there. One last thing on Bo, quickly here. Is there a world, and I know we were all together for that season-ending press conference, and I tried to milk it out of him a little bit, that is there a world that you guys can see that he says to himself, you know what, didn't win a championship, but I did the best I could possibly do in my numbers, best career numbers, best record numbers for the Tiger Cats, that he sails off into the sunset? Could you see that, Rick?
I cannot see that. No. Bo has been, throughout his career, a big-time player, a winner. He's won at every level. I think he wants to win a Grey Cup for Hamilton. I think any player who comes here, it's much like the Maple Leafs. They want to bring a cup to a long, starving fan base, and I think he sees that as a challenge. I think this year he clearly proved that he can do it. Some other pieces to the team had to fall into place. I don't think he's thinking retirement at all. He's, as I mentioned, played 18 games for the first time in like 6 or 8 years. Was really complimentary of the training staff, Marcelo Spoman, the strength and conditioning coach, to get him to that level. I think he realizes offensively, great offensive line, lots of weapons. Probably thinking a lot of these free agents are going to come back. I think he looks at this picture and thinks, I can win a championship here. I think he wants to win a championship here.
Yeah, I say no. And I think it was Rick who actually asked at the press conference at the end of the year, because I didn't remember either. This is the first time Bo ever missed the playoffs in his career. Yeah. You people can say, the players get paid. They don't really care. They say they do, but I really do believe that if you are a competitive guy, whether you go out on a championship, you don't want to go out on your 1 year of corporate failure. and he's got a year left and it's paying okay money. And I had someone ask me this week, any chance that the Ticats trade him to get him at top value? And I was like, yeah, I don't think they could if they wanted to, especially now that he's an MOP candidate. I don't think you're sure about Taylor Powell yet, and you certainly don't have any idea about Tunga Vailoa because he only had 4 plays all year, and they were all runs from the 1 yard line. So I think Bo Levi comes back next year, and he's a Ticat, and they try and play the last half of the year in the first half and make a run at it.
It's changed leagues now. The 2-time defending champion Kansas City Chiefs are the lone undefeated team at 7-0. I recently had former ESPN NFL host and DraftKings Network anchor Trey Wingo on the Sportsline Podcast, and he offered his opinion about the Chiefs and why their quarterback is so good.
Well, because he's the coldest MFer I've ever seen in my life. All right, that's the easiest way to describe it. And you're watching this play, a 33-yard run, the longest of his career. He just knows how to win games. The Chiefs know how to win. And you can call people, not you, people on your show can call them fraudulent. That's fine. They haven't lost since December. Okay. And I don't think they're losing this Sunday either. And they just picked up DeAndre Hopkins. You bet against the Chiefs at your own peril, because they are the modern day version of the New England Patriots.
The word fraudulent wasn't the exact word, but it was pretty close. And it's right at you, Scott. Your thoughts?
I still say they're fraudulent. I think they are the most lucky, fortunate 7-0 team that is due. When they lose one, they're going to lose 4 in a row. Or 3 in a row. This is a team, a couple of things. First of all, you look at the strength of schedule. Somehow, and I never understand this team that won the Super Bowl has a strength of schedule in the bottom, easiest third of the league. How that works out. And the New England Patriots have the hardest schedule in the league. You will never explain to me how that works. The Chiefs seem to get this soft schedule almost every year. And so, yeah, they've got a soft schedule. And I'm sorry if this is going to upset someone. Patrick Mahomes, right now, is the most overrated currently playing athlete in professional sports.
Whoa!
He is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He is 24th in QB rating. He's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. If it wasn't for his defense, we talked defense with the Ticats. If it wasn't for the defense and Andy Reid, they would not be close to 7-0. Patrick Mahomes is being carried by this team, not the other way around. I'm sorry. Patrick Mahomes, this talk that he's going to pass Tom Brady, it's never going to happen. Patrick Mahomes...
He's halfway there.
It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I'm sorry. Patrick Mahomes is not a great quarterback right now. I'm not talking about what he's done in the past. Okay. I'm saying as an NFL quarterback right now, if you, for this year, had a scramble and every NFL GM was allowed to pick a quarterback for this year based on how you're playing, Patrick Mahomes is not in the top 5. He's probably not in the top, maybe not in the top 10 based on how you're playing now. And the fact that they keep winning these games, to me, is just the reckoning is coming for that team. I don't know when it's going to come, but they are not a great team right now.
What's the most important stat as a quarterback, QBR or W's?
W's, but, and I've always said this is a stat that is made for liars. Because as we just talked about with Bo Levi Mitchell, there are 3 phases to a football team: offense, defense, special teams. And if Kansas City's defense isn't the best or in the top 3, this team's not undefeated. If Kansas City's special teams unit, which has been really special over the years, not a top 5 special teams team, this team's not undefeated. The offense is good and has been monumentally great, but it has taken a step back, primarily through injuries, right? They really don't have a running back. They grab some guy off the scrap heap, and he's having a great campaign. Hurting. Yeah, their offensive line has been interchangeable with injuries as well. They've lost a couple of receivers, so they've been hit by the injury bug. But they don't have to beat teams now 48-24, right? They're winning ball games 27-13 or 24-10 because the defense primarily is controlling the game. Now, if I'm starting a franchise, Patrick Mahomes is on my top 3 list for starting quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, top 3, end of story. And everyone else is kind of in that second or third tier. But yeah, right now, statistically, Mahomes is having a dreadful campaign.
But is that not, I mean, for him to have a great completion percentage, it's got to be a good wide receiver on the other end as well. Like, they're all kind of complementary statistics as well,
What
too.
does Josh Allen have? I mean, Josh Allen got Amari Cooper now, but at the beginning of the year, all the discussion was Josh Allen has no receivers of note. And he's having a good year.
Well, he's had a good running attack, and he's also they before they brought in Cooper, and it's still arguable. They're giving everyone the ball, like they have everyone's.
But they had no stars. They had. You're talking about receiver.
Right.
Kansas City has guys too.
Yeah.
So how is it that Josh Allen is okay to make his team go without the stars, but we can't really hold it against Mahomes because he doesn't really have any stars this year. Mahomes has had a galaxy of stars in his time with Kansas City. And here's another thing. This drives me nuts about the Patrick Mahomes debate, that he's such a winner. Do you think that if Josh Allen was on Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes was on Buffalo, that Buffalo would have won those Super Bowls and Kansas City would have won none? Or Lamar Jackson, if he was not on Baltimore, but he was for Kansas City, they wouldn't have won because only Patrick Mahomes could have made that happen? No way. That year that the Buffalo team gave up that 13-second thing, that had nothing to do with Josh Allen. Yeah. He was on the bench. He just scored a touchdown. That was not, so, it is, to me, Andy Reid is right now showing, other than New England, Bill Belichick. Other than Belichick, he is the greatest coach of this generation. And Kansas City's defensive coordinator, whose name is also eluding me right now, Spagnuolo, is showing himself to be probably, of this generation, the best defensive coordinator. Okay,
that's great to be a great play caller, but someone's got to execute the play call, right? I mean,
but if a terrible coach can lead to a terrible team, and they're fired all the time, why can a great coach not lead to a great team? Otherwise, coaches are totally irrelevant. Let's not have them.
Well, you got a game plan, especially in football, but someone has to execute the play, right? And at the end, at football, maybe unlike any other sport, where you game plan all week long, but at the end of the day, execution is the reason why you win or lose.
I think the quarterback position of all the sports leagues that we analyze and cheer for our favorite teams or favorite players, football and that quarterback position, you get the most credit when things are going great, and you get the most blame when things are going badly. Whether it's entirely your fault or not, whether you make a big play or a big mistake, the praise is huge and the critique is too much. At the end of the day, Mahomes is a great quarterback. The trophies kind of prove that. The most valuable player awards, the offensive player awards that he's achieved. He's had a great cast of characters, and so do a lot of other quarterbacks. There's only one guy who's going to win it, but at the end of the day, the team wins. So back to the whether it's wins or losses or whatever the case is, I think if you have a good team, and Kansas City's a really good team, especially on defense, those wins are going to come. They're not always because of what Patrick Mahomes did on the field. Great player, but it takes a team to get that W.
It's crazy because I can't stand the Chiefs. I'm a Bills fan, and I'm sort of supporting the guy wearing 15, and it's driving me nuts. I just think that guys are a little harsh on a 7-0 team that's being led by one of the greater quarterbacks of our era.
Not this year, though. That's my point, is not this year. It has been a lot of breaks that have led to this, and the defense has carried them.
Are they going to win the division?
Okay. Yeah, but here's another Patrick Mahomes question. This is not a dump on Patrick Mahomes, because again, his resume speaks for itself. We're talking about now, but if Patrick Mahomes had not been drafted by Kansas City and got in with Andy Reid and the rest of the guys there, if he'd been drafted by the Cleveland Browns, would the Cleveland Browns be the Kansas City Chiefs right now?
Well, there's a reason why the Cleveland Browns have gone through I just saw this week in the 2000s, 38 quarterbacks. Yeah. They've gone through
just as many head coaches as well.
It really is there's something wrong there. So
sure,
but I do understand what you're saying.
Put it with I don't know, pick your other team that
the Jets.
With the Jets. Yeah. With I look at I'm having such a hard time with names today. What's his name? Who's now quarterback down in Tampa, was with Cleveland. Baker Mayfield, all right? To me, Patrick Mahomes probably would have been similar to Baker Mayfield had he gone to Cleveland. Guy who doesn't succeed there, goes somewhere else where there's a better system, something that is better set up for him, and has success. I just, I'm sorry to name drop, but the Chris Collinsworth and the Tony Romo over the top lauding of I mean, look at how Patrick Mahomes puts on his headband. No one else in football could possibly tie a headband like that. It's over the top. He is a guy who's got a resume. He's a really good quarterback, not this year, but he is not the guy who is so far ahead of everyone else in the history of football that can't do anything wrong. Look at this handoff technique. The way the 38-degree angle on his arm when he hands the ball. No one else could possibly do that. It's just ridiculous. It's too much.
They might be, well, when you look at it, they're 7-0. When you compare them to other 7-0 teams from years gone by, maybe not the best 7-0 team ever, maybe not even close. When you look at, the Dolphins from 72, the Ravens had a good run a few years ago, New England in their almost unbeaten season. I mean, they were really stacked teams on offense, defense, and special teams. So if something's missing in Kansas City, I'm not even sure Kansas City's the best team in the NFL right now. I would handle
Detroit.
Put that mantle on Detroit. They are steamrolling teams, playing amazing defense and amazing offense.
Doesn't mean Kansas City can't before the end of the year. If Mahomes turns it back around and that offense gets going like it has, I'm talking about at this moment, they are not. But they have the potential to do it, and they just aren't.
It's amazing. 7-0. Now, there were some high hopes for the Toronto Maple Leafs entering this season, and I know they've only played, I think, 9 games. 5-10, 5-4-1, I think they are right now. Hey, they deliver a loss to the Winnipeg Jets, who had not lost. But then they go into Boston and they lose once again in overtime. And guess who scores? David Pastrnak. Both of you are card-carrying members of Leaf Nation. Don't hide it. Are you happy? Do you think there's going to be a difference under Craig Berube this year?
Well, there's going to be a difference. I don't know how much it's under. I don't know how much it's under Craig Berube. I mean, the difference right now is look at their defense. It is an entirely different defensive core, much bigger, much more physical, much grindier than we've seen. So whether Sheldon Keefe was there or Craig Berube, would that be enough to change it? Or is Berube uniquely positioned to coach big, strong behemoth defenseman and Sheldon Keefe like puck moving guy?
It was a style that led to a cup in 2019, though, right?
So
that heavy style.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, they're showing some signs. You've got Tanev blocking everything, and you've got great goaltending, which, I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who your coach is. If your goalie is good, you look like a great coach. Pat Quinn used to say that all the time, I think. On the flip side, Berube's style has Austin Matthews struggling to score goals right now. Is that on Craig Berube? Is that his style? Or I mean, I don't know. I think it's too early to determine whether Berube, what impact he's going to have an impact. You're a coach. You're always going to. But what impact? I don't know.
I think the one thing that has been created by Berube's hiring is that now you have the GM and the head coach on the same page. They both like that rough and tumble, bigger D, more aggressive north-south game, as opposed to the wheeling and dealing, high-flying, forget about defense Maple Leafs that we've seen over the last number of years. So I think now that you have the GM and the coach on the same page, we're kind of seeing that in the roster with guys like Tanev, Hakanpää coming into the lineup, Liljegren getting shipped out to San Jose, Nick Robertson given an opportunity
Get him out.
Hasn't materialized, and you see guys like Max Pacioretty, who's playing a more physical style. He kind of has assumed this role of, I'm not going to score 30 goals anymore, but if I chip in 10 but play 200 feet of ice, I'm going to stay in this lineup. So I think as the season progresses, 10 games does not make a season, obviously. You got 72 more to go. I think we're going to see this team kind of morph into what ultimately Berube and Treliving want to see in the playoffs, and that is tougher to play against, grittier, check. You've heard Berube say we have to check better, and I think we're going to see that hopefully come playoff time.
The one thing that I would hope that Craig Berube would take advantage of, because when you're a new guy, you can do stuff that when you've been there 3 or 4 years, it's harder. Because I would tell Mark Savard right now to take that power play and throw it in the blender. And look, we're 10 games in, and I owe nothing. Austin Matthews has a lovely giant contract. We owe him nothing. We don't owe Willie Nylander, who's got a big contract, anything. We don't owe Mitch Marner, who's coming up. I know, whatever. I would say this power play is horrible. So you know what? For the next 5 games, some of you guys might get on, but we're changing it completely because it can't be worse. It can't be worse. So let's put Nick Robertson on there, and let's try Pacioretty on there, and let's blow it up, because what you've got right now how long have they been sticking with this now? 1.5 years, 2 years, 3 years, the same group, and they make one change.
I mean, you're going to tell me you're going to take Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, one of the more creative players, and of course a Nylander, who's, I mean, is such a great skater, entry into the zone. You can't take those guys. That's your first power play guy.
Why not? How are they doing?
Yeah,
they stink.
Working. It's not working. But
on the power play.
On the flip side, though, those same guys were the best power player, at least top 3 in the league the last couple of seasons. So what has happened from basically February until now? Because starting in February, it went from top 2 to kind of middle of the pack because they were so horrible. It was non-existent in the playoffs, and at the start of the season, I think they're 3 for 32 or some abysmal stat like that. It's crazy. Like, something has to change, and either you're changing the pieces that are on the ice and putting them in different spots, or you're actually changing the people who are running the power play. And I think that's probably the next step.
I don't know who the person was. I don't want to take credit for this because an analyst who watches all the Leafs games was talking about it, but they said, watch the power play. There is never a Leaf in front of the net.
Right.
Everything's on the perimeter, and because there's nobody in front of the net, you might get one shot. But whereas another team then recovers the puck and you tire out the defense because you keep it in and you go again, they get one shot and boom, it's down the ice. The other team gets to change. Matthew Knies, Max Pacioretty, you put someone right in front of the net.
And Knies is a
big guy.
Big boy.
He's huge. Yeah. Do something. What's that line about insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? We're past that point now. Yeah. The playoffs last year, the end of last year, this year, it's not working. So I know you've got egos and I know you've got talent, and I know you've got all these things. It's not working. So if you have to tell Matthews, you know what? We're going to sit you for a couple power plays and see. Maybe everyone's deferring so much to Austin Matthews that they're not taking a shot that they have.
Could be.
Maybe Marner is only looking to Matthews. Try something, and maybe you end up going back to this in 5 or 6 games.
Crazy thing is, on 5-on-5, that second line that he just sort of came up with, Berube, putting together Pacioretty, slow, Tavares slow, but to his credit, he not big, but he goes to the net, right? And Nylander, I mean, they produced incredible amounts of points in their last outing. I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't know if that's going to continue, but it was impressive to see these 2 veteran guys working so well together. And of course, Nylander's just a natural talent.
Yeah, what worked on that line, especially in the Winnipeg game, is they won puck battles. Whether it was behind the net, in the corners, sideboards, open ice, they were winning puck battles, giving it to their line mate or passing back to the defense. And before you know it, Tavares has got a hat trick. That line is humming. Like, if you're going to win puck battles, the other lines have to say, all right, we got to do that too. We're going to, have that offensive zone presence, hem them in for a minute or two and, get a couple of great scoring chances.
Last thing on the Leafs here, and I don't know if the glass shoe is going to just blow up, but Anthony Stolarz, where'd he come from? He was just a guy that's been a backup everywhere he's been. Yeah. And to me, he's the number 1 guy in goal, ahead of Joe Wall when he comes back.
Without a doubt. Wall apparently is supposed to start tonight. But Stolarz, let's not forget, when Bobrovsky was struggling, not last season, but 2 seasons ago, and Florida's trying to get into the playoffs, it was Stolarz who kind of carried them into the postseason. Then they kind of, went back and forth. And then certainly Bobrovsky was amazing last year. But Stolarz, you look at his stats last year too, among the top 5 guys in terms of, save percentage, goals against average. He's a premier player. So I'm really intrigued to see if he can continue this, because he's had a phenomenal start.
Never started more than 30 games.
You need a chance, right? And let's have real throwback. Let's throw it so far back that only people who watch black and white TV will remember. Johnny Bauer was in the AHL until he was 33 years old.
That's wild. Yeah.
Because he couldn't get a chance. Then he gets a chance and he becomes a Hall of Famer. I think he was 33 years old. You just, sometimes you're behind Bobrovsky. You're not playing a lot. So give the guy a chance, and we're seeing what can happen. And sometimes, how many goalies have the Leafs tried who have blown up in their face. Maybe they're due to have one that goes, wow, a pleasant surprise rather than a dump.
Yeah, the list of names is
It's very long.
We don't have to go through them.
It's very long. Tune in for the third hour of Sportsline while we recount the Leaf failures in goal. Leaf backup goalies and Ticat quarterbacks since 1999.
Boy, what a fun, that's a good column. There is a good column right there.
I don't have enough space in the paper.
Hey, 50 years ago this week, Muhammad Ali beat George Foreman in what was famously called the Rumble in the Jungle, and then Kinshasa Zaire. When it's all said and done, and you look back, and between the three of us, we've all been involved in sports for so long, and we've all had our favorite sports, and you can look through it. But quite honestly, and I saw this on PTI, pardon the interruption, and of course, Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon, they said that Muhammad Ali is the most compelling athlete of all time. Would you agree to this, Scott?
What do you mean by compelling? And I'm not trying to dodge the question. When you say compelling, do you mean best athlete, or you can't look away?
Best,
or
but someone that just attracted our compelling, that we thirsted for more, that we just seem to.
We couldn't look away.
I mean, will we ever forget the Beatles? Will we ever forget Elvis Presley? Probably not. And this is multiple generations past their big time of impact. And yet, Muhammad Ali's lore still lingers years after his last fight.
It's an interesting question because I don't think he was the best boxer ever.
No.
And I don't think that he was great at the chirping and the bragging and the talking and everything, but I don't know if he was the best ever. And I don't know that he was the most political athlete ever. But I don't know that anyone has been higher in all those categories altogether.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I would say the closest, this is a great question. I don't think there's a definitive answer, but I think the closest athlete to Muhammad Ali, and we kind of referenced him a few minutes ago, would be Tom Brady. A guy who wins so many more championships and did it for so long, primarily with one team, but also did it with another team as well. And whenever he was playing, every Sunday, you would want to know, how many touchdowns did Tom Brady throw for today? How many yards did he won again? Like, he's winning another championship. And I think he's probably the closest to Ali. Tom was very vanilla when it came to.
So you take that one out.
Yeah.
That category goes away.
Exactly. So, for Ali, he was on the right side of history when it comes to, going into the draft and going to the Vietnam War. He didn't want any part of that. And we all, know the famous quote. But I think even after his boxing career, you still always loved to see him, whether it was the Atlanta Olympics opening ceremony or, his philanthropic efforts. Like, he was seemingly everywhere.
And he's still, I was just down in Kentucky, in Louisville, a few weeks ago, and he is still a towering figure. They have the Muhammad Ali Center, which unfortunately was closed the 4 days we were there. Typical. But we also drove by. We went to his childhood home. It's a National Historic Site. I think we talked about this last time I was on here. You can now buy. I think it's still for sale for $1.5 million. If you're still rounding up the money and you want to own it.
Still trying.
Another guy that I would put in that mix that I would even put ahead of Tom Brady, although I know exactly what you're saying, would be Tiger Woods. Now, not necessarily as worldwide, perhaps,
right,
but in North America and Europe, I would argue that Tiger Woods, in this generation, as far as top of his sport, people tuned in, couldn't look away. Look, we have entire channels on TV that would move away from the golf that was going on the course to watch Tiger Woods walk from his car to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
We have golf coverage was changed, so we didn't watch necessarily the leaders. We'd tune in for one, but we'd see every Tiger Woods shot because still, because and if we're using the word compelling, and again, when I was growing up as a young man, I said, to me, Wayne Gretzky was that guy. Every night you tuned in to see what did Wayne Gretzky do, because what he was doing was magic. Magic Johnson for me was that guy, same kind of thing. But none of those guys, certainly Wayne Gretzky, other than calling the New Jersey Devils a Mickey Mouse organization once in his life, that was the closest he ever came to something controversial.
Yeah.
You know, and Tiger doesn't say a lot that's controversial, and Magic Johnson more lately has when he was diagnosed with AIDS, that was very controversial.
Right.
But
at that time.
I don't know who else has put those three things together.
Here's the thing, and this is why I think, to me, the Tom Brady, respectfully, doesn't work. And I think this is great the way both of you have kind of framed this up. That so you can take a look at all the top athletes, and there's different categories. To me, I could not take a picture of Tom Brady and go to Iraq.
Right. Name
this person. I don't know. Right? Mm-hmm. Whereas you could take a picture of Muhammad Ali, and every corner of the world, and I said, hasn't been in the ring for decades, has passed maybe, 5 years ago? And I don't know if there's anyone, especially in our age group, that would not know that's Muhammad Ali.
Right.
And I think that list that you could do that for all the top athletes in the world is real small. I might maybe a Pele, Tiger Woods for sure, because Tiger Woods, in all he did for golfing in North America, was one of the first guys to start golfing in Japan. He went on the Euro Tour every once in a while. His brand, because he was not just black, and he made people understand he was biracial with the Asian aspect of him, made him a huge figure. But the Ali thing to me is just, and this is why I put him number one. He came in at the right time of the world, before internet, when the world was this small.
Right.
Right? Imagine, and
he had Howard Cosell as the perfect,
right? And I was just going the ABC route, because few people, I just read this and then went on YouTube and found it. Few people in the United States knew what the Kremlin looked like. And Ali went there to go see, I don't know, would have been Gorbachev, I can't remember. And he was touring it, and this was the number one thing on Wide World of Sports, that particular thing, of Muhammad Ali with the leader of Russia, of the Soviet Union, walking around in the Kremlin, right? In 1972. Crazy.
Yeah.
And then you look at his athletic things, 3-time world champion, the first to regain the world championship when he beat George Foreman for the heavyweight title, and then with Spinks would win it a third time. Mm-hmm. There's just so much to him outside of it. The Muslim aspect of it, it's massive.
Yeah. I would say Tiger's pretty close, especially, you mentioned kind of there wasn't a wow factor in terms of off the golf course, but the sex scandal, I think, brought a whole different kind of viewer kind of attention to him. Yeah, absolutely. So now you have people who aren't golf fans who are like, what's going on with Tiger Woods? And then maybe through osmosis became golf fans. But yeah, a larger than life figure that every Thursday through Sunday you were kind of keeping tabs on.
I would also throw, if you're talking about today, Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, if you go around the world and show those pictures, they probably would be more familiar than Muhammad Ali. And there was another one that I just was thinking of that I just forgot as well. That you know who else? And this is crazy because I'm not actually comparing, but if you went around the world and showed the picture, I bet you that in most parts of the world, if you showed a picture of Andre the Giant.
I was thinking the same thing.
Wow.
Andre the Giant.
Him or Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and the other guy, and I just remembered who else I was going to say. If you're talking about compelling athletes in my life, Muhammad Ali was in my lifetime, but I was still very young when he was at his peak. Mike Tyson. You could not look away from. Now, you didn't have to look away long because he knocked everybody out in 15 seconds, but there was, in my lifetime, even above Ali, there was no boxer that was more of I have to tune in to watch that guy than Mike Tyson.
Let's not forget, too, he came in really when pay-per-view was kind of exploding, right? Yeah. So now there was more eyeballs on there. It would have been amazing to see if social media was around, how much of a factor that would have been with Mike, knocking out guys in 13 seconds.
But you didn't have to go to the arena like the old pay-per-views where you sat there. You could watch from home.
Yeah.
And this is one of the great debates of all time, and it'll never get resolved about who would have won if Ali and Tyson had fought. And I know this is saccharine to say, I still think Tyson would have had a great chance just because of how fast, because he was as fast as Ali, which nobody else was, and he hit so bloody hard. Now, the problem was, if Ali could have dragged him into 3 or 4 rounds, Ali probably wins.
Exactly what he did to Foreman.
Yes.
Because
Right?
think about this, and when you read into it, it's amazing. People that loved Muhammad Ali, people that worked for Muhammad Ali, were afraid for his life. And people would forget. George Foreman, there's an article too with this is Ali's sparring partner that also had worked with George and said he can kill you. Like, he can literally not just knock you out and kill you. They were afraid. He could killed.
Yeah,
remember, Ali was sort of like 33, 34 years old, and George was this guy that was knocking out Kenny Norton, knocking out Joe Frazier, guys that Ali kind of struggled a little bit with. Crazy stuff.
But we've now got, I got to run here, even though it's a podcast, so we could literally go all day. But we got a Tyson fight coming up in 5 days, 6 days, a week, something like that.
Yes.
And I bet you, Netflix doesn't, I don't think, share its viewership numbers. I bet the numbers are going to be enormous because it's Tyson and because he's now a bit of a curiosity, because if you've watched any of the videos of him training, he looks really good. Little local angle for you if you want. The guy who's on the pads for Mike Tyson, Dewey Cooper, was Hamilton Sports Hall of Fame Jessica Rakoczy's trainer.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I will be tuning in. I don't even know what night it is. I can't remember. It's sometime in the first week in November. I'm tuning in.
The
No
15th?
question I'm tuning in.
I gotta admit, like, when it first happened, I said, I'm not doing this.
Right.
This is a train wreck ready to happen. Now I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, because the Roy Jones, remember when he did the fight with Roy Jones, but it was like this weird exhibition. Neither of them were really in shape. They didn't really, they wore like pillows for boxing gloves. So this one, like, if you believe anything of the hype, Tyson looks like he really does want to show that he can still fight.
Kill him. Nearly 60 years of age.
Yeah, like, I don't know if I buy that he really is angry, like or if that's just hype, but I do believe that he does not want to go in there and look bad.
Right.
I do think he wants to show that he's got something to prove and that he can still, I don't know if he will, because his last fights were not good. We forget that his last fights were not good, but he was also in a, not to defend, but he was in a weird place.
Just doing it for the money.
And he also has, I think, from a legacy standpoint, much more to lose than Jake Paul. I mean, at the end of the day, who is Jake Paul? He's a YouTuber who is transformed into a wannabe pro boxer. If Tyson gets embarrassed in this fight, which I don't see happening, I mean, that's a big knockout to his legacy.
Well, that's a great point, because there's a whole generation. There's people here that work at this station that never saw a Tyson fight. I mean, they'd have to probably go on YouTube.
You can watch all of them in 7 minutes.
All, right? You know what I mean? But you're right. It's a whole legacy thing that people are like, oh yeah, he's the guy from what was the name of the movie?
Oh, The Hangover.
Yeah, he's the guy from The Hangover.
Wait, I got to do the drums.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what they know for Mike Tyson. It's like, no, man, this guy was really good.
Yeah.
He was terrifying.
Terrifying.
He was terrifying.
Right?
And again, this is for anyone who's our age or older. We're just telling you what you already know. But there was nobody else that came into the ring without a robe, without just, you come in with a towel with a hole ripped in it and over your head, and you come in with a full sweat on and a scowl. And I still believe, I believe a lot in the psychology of sports. I believe 80% of the guys Mike Tyson fought were defeated before the first punch was thrown because they were scared. They couldn't fight their fight because they were scared for their life.
Absolutely.
And we're doing everything just to stay alive, and he could just track you down.
Tell Michael Spinks that 91 seconds.
Yes.
Right? You're right. Black socks, black shoes, black shorts. That's all he needed.
And it was blackout.
Blackout.
Every time, just about.
Time to turn the lights out on this podcast, guys. This has been amazing. This is a great chat, guys. This reminds me of the old home games thing, and it was wild with it when you think about it. Boy, 4 years ago, the coronavirus, right? Like
5 years ago in March.
Like, can you believe that? The whole sports world shut down, like everything. No one can do anything. You were driving to work, and there's no one on the roads. Like
Those were the days.
Like,
From a traffic standpoint, that was pretty sweet.
No, but thank you so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, CHML's gone. We got time.
We appreciate that, and your opinions and your knowledge. I really appreciate it. I know our viewers certainly do, and there were a couple of topics there that I think are really, really compelling. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
All right, guys. That's your Sportsline podcast for the day, and you've just seen and heard we love talking about sports and going on and talking about it. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline podcast do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. If you do have something to say, something to contribute to the conversation, please comment. For the wonderful people that do make the Sportsline podcast possible in the control room, thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.